Hey y'all, this is Software Focus, and today we're going back to basics with Camtasia. You don't want to miss this. Today's episode will be focused on the media library used within Camtasia. With Camtasia open, you can access the library by clicking on the Library tab on the left side. This will open up the library. By default, you're going to have one main library called Camtasia 2019. You will be able to switch between libraries under this drop-down. You'll have one other library called Default. Currently, nothing's in there. The default library that comes with Camtasia has icons, intros, lower thirds, motion backgrounds, some music tracks, and some pre-built outros. Using these is very similar to how you would pull media from the media bin. You simply find the piece of media you want, and you can either drag it down to the timeline, drag it over to the canvas, or you can right-click and add timeline to playhead. When you add a piece of media from the library to your project, it then puts itself in the media bin to let you know that it is being used in that project. You can search the library using this search bar here. By default, that searches the library you're in, but if you click the drop down next to the magnifying glass, you'll get an option to search all libraries, and any previous searches are put below. As mentioned before, you can switch between libraries from the drop-down. You can manage the library from the drop-down as well. You can rename a library. This applies to any default or new libraries you create. You can delete an entire library. This option is grayed out for me because there's currently nothing in here. And you can import a zipped library. You can download more assets. Clicking this link will take you to the Camtasia Asset Store. You can create a new library. And it allows you to start from a particular library, so it'll like pull what the current assets are, and it'll show up in the list. And you can find more library help by clicking this option. It will take you to TechSmith's support site that goes over the library. You can add content to these user libraries. If it's blank, you can click this green media or green import media button. Browse to the media you're wanting to add to the library. It'll import, and then it'll appear as an item here in the library. From the media itself, you can right-click and add it to the timeline. You can preview it. You can import more media into the library. You can create a new folder for organization. And you can drag media into those folders so it'll be contained. You can delete any media that you right-click on. You can rename it. You can export a particular asset as a libzip file. You can, again, import a zipped library. You can copy a particular file to another library, which will leave it here and put a copy in another library. You can move to another library, which will move it. You can sort all the assets in your library by particular aspect: name, type, date added, date used, reverse order. And you can get details on a particular asset. If you have a library that you want to move to another computer, say you've designed out a library and you want another colleague to have the same assets, or you need to move your content from one computer to another because you're upgrading, the computer died, etc. You can right click, or you can click the drop down under library, choose manage library, export library, and this is going to export the currently selected library. Browse to where you're going to store the libzip. This should be kept local and then moved if you need to move it to another computer. Name it and then save. Camtasia then exports the library, and if we open that file location, we'll see our test libzip appear in our file explorer. If you need to import another library, you can again go to manage library, import zipped library, select the libzip file, open it, select whether it gets added to a current library or create a new one, and it then creates a library with the same name as the libzip file. In this case, I already had a library called test, so it incremented it test1. In the lower left corner of the library, you'll notice there's a plus sign, just like in the media bin. If you click on it, it'll have a grayed out option of add timeline selection to library, and I'll show that in a second, and import media to library. So this is just like how you import a piece of media to the media bin. You click it, it allows you to then import a piece of media into the library. There's also a download more assets link, which does the same thing as this download more assets. It takes you to the Camtasia library asset site, where you can download more assets if you have the asset subscription. The power of the library comes into play when you make custom assets for future use. So if I make a call out, I can then take this call out, right click on it in the timeline, and there's an option of add to library. I can then give it a name and then select which library I'm going to save it to. Then if I look back in the library, you see it's here and here, and I can just pull it over as many times as I'd like without having to recreate it. This can work for templating, or if you use an asset multiple times in different projects. Under the file menu, there are also library options. So file, library, import media. Again, it imports media into the library. Export individual assets, import a zipped library, or download more assets. If you have a video and you want to save a section of that video as a particular asset, you have that video down into the timeline. You use the red and green tabs to select what portion you want to save. You can then right click in the selected area, and there's an add timeline selection to library. There's also an option under the plus sign in the library, add timeline selection. Clicking this option will pull up this just like you were importing a piece of media, where you can name it, select which library to save to, and it will then appear in the library. And if we pull this down, you'll notice it's the same size as the previously selected section. And if we play this, you'll notice it's the section I just had selected. So you can pull specific sections out of another piece of video for future use if it's something you're going to reuse multiple times. The library is essentially, as you may have gathered, a more permanent storage space for any media that you use regularly. So unlike the media bin, which is a per project repository of content, the library stays the same regardless of what project you're in. So if I was to close Camtasia and reopen it, do that here. Start a new project. You'll notice the media bin is empty. If you recall earlier, we had that one clip in the media bin, but if we go under library again, we'll see that the three libraries I had are still here, And if I go into one, that one was blank before. If we go under here, you'll see that's still there, and that's still there. The library basically allows you to keep particular assets that either you custom make or you collate into a single area where you can easily pull from it in multiple projects. This has been Software Focus. If you like this video, hit that like button, or click subscribe to join the channel for future videos. If you have any feedback or ideas for future videos, please leave a comment down below. Keep focusing!